Thank you. And on the condo front, I'm sure the CEA will have quite a bit to discuss on that matter, especially given the smaller number of structures with lesser number of units and larger. Thank you very much. If you can stay, please do so. Next, we will have the California Earthquake Authority, the California Geological Survey, and the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And on a quick note, I want to say thank you very much to the OES office as well as the Geological Survey. I know that you usually appear in a different subcommittee, so thank you for being here. Ms. Maffei?
Yes.
Please.
Great. Well, my name is Janelle Maffei, and I'm a structural engineer. I'm the Chief Mitigation Officer with the California Earthquake Authority, and I'm also the Executive Director of the California Residential Mitigation Program, or CRMP, which is a unique entity that was created with a Joint Powers Authority agreement between the CEA and the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. CRMP was established in 2011, and it was created in order to provide incentive programs to California homeowners to retrofit against earthquake damage. Our first incentive program, which we rolled out as a pilot 2 years ago with just 8 houses, is called Earthquake Brace and Bolt, EBB, and Robert Harrell mentioned this program to you. It's one of the very few programs in the state in terms of retrofit programs that are addressing single-family dwellings. So it's very important that this program is only for 1 to 4 units, so single-family dwellings. One of the other programs might be like the Berkeley transfer tax refund that provides incentives to homeowners. EBB focuses on a particular kind of vulnerability. If you look at risk as being a combination of hazard, meaning what earthquake fault are you near, what kind of soil are you on, and what is your vulnerability, which is what kind of a building are you in. We focus on a particular kind of a vulnerability, which Robert also mentioned, which is the cripple wall house. So it's pre-1979 cripple wall houses. That means that they were constructed before seismic codes were readily adopted throughout the state of California. These homes are not adequately attached to their foundation. They have a tendency to slide or topple off of their foundation in even moderate earthquakes, which we would consider actually the Napa earthquake to be right on the cusp of a moderate earthquake. EBB provides up to $3,000 to homeowners who bolt and brace their houses in accordance with a code. It's very important that when we are retrofitting structures that we are using standards or codes, because if you leave it up to the market, of course, sometimes they're partial retrofits or they're not done appropriately. EBB in 2015, we retrofitted just under 500 homes, and we have 88 that are permitted, and we have a really good track record for homes that are permitted finishing the work. And so once people take that step of getting a permit, so we were right on target for our 600 houses that we wanted to do. With the additional $3 million from the state budget, for which I'd like to second the thank you to Assemblymember Nazarian and others who assisted in that, the Department of Insurance included in that. We plan on retrofitting 1,600 houses in 18 cities in Northern and Southern California. Registration for this particular rollout closed on February 20th, and we had over 44 homeowners who registered for that program. We're very excited about that. So we will send out emails very, very soon that notify a homeowner that they're either selected into the program or they're on a waiting list. And we will include more than 1,600 in our acceptance because we have a good track record now for how many people drop out of the program. But I will tell you that we do a lot of hand-holding because once they state their intent to retrofit, we try very, very hard to do everything we can to get them through the program. Basically, when they are accepted into the program, they're given 8 weeks to find a contractor and to get a permit, and the permit is extremely important. The permit is what is the process by which we establish that they have done the work according to code, because the building official needs to sign off on that permit when the work is completed. They have 6 months to complete the retrofit. A good contractor who knows how to do this can do this work in 2 to 3 days. It takes obviously a do-it-yourselfer who might want to endeavor this. It's a little longer, but it's a pretty simple retrofit, and it's all done under the home, so not a lot of disruption to the homeowners. Robert Harrell mentioned over 1 million homes in high-hazard areas alone in California who need some kind of retrofit. And at about $5,100 per retrofit, which is what we're finding for the average, that's about a $5 billion problem to the state of California. So we are looking for every possible means of funding for this program. Obviously, we have our loss mitigation fund by which we started the program. We're doing additional things like developing additional codes and additional research and education, which is so important to get people to understand this vulnerability. We also were able to get a FEMA hazard mitigation grant program funding. So we're going to be doing 100 homes in Napa this year with that grant money from FEMA, and registration is currently open and closes March 22nd. We've submitted another application for additional FEMA funding to do retrofits in Humboldt and Santa Barbara counties. To close, before I ask if you have any questions, I just wanted to say that I was at the site of the Napa earthquake the morning of the earthquake. It happened at 3 a.m. I was there at 9 o'clock in the morning, because as people start to clean up, you want to see the damage before really it's cleaned up. And it's an important laboratory for engineers to understand what's going on in earthquakes. I took pictures of many houses, particularly these older houses that had toppled and slid off of their foundations, very serious damage. And I was back 1 year later, took pictures of the same houses, and I will tell you that of the pictures that I took of these houses, none of them had been reoccupied 1 year later. In fact, they were all still under construction, quite a bit more work to do. So homeowners are living somewhere else, still paying the mortgage, and trying, if their kids are in schools in Napa, they're trying to get back to get their kids to schools. They're trying to be part of the resiliency of the community and bringing it back to its original trajectory in terms of what that city was. And this is serious damage. And so this is the most cost-effective, modest investment that a homeowner can make in terms of providing resiliency for what is really a serious financial and emotional hardship. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Just a quick process question. So the folks that are on the wait list automatically go towards the next year program.
So I'm going to do one of these little, Jerry? So we were able to put everyone who was on our waiting list through our program last year, and so this will be a new opportunity. It depends entirely on how many people complete the program. So if someone drops out, we immediately go to that wait list. And so if we have significant drops out and we exhaust the wait list, then that's what we'll do this year. If not, then those people will be invited to participate next year. So we have a very good chance that we'll be including people who register in this program.
Okay. I guess we need to do something to make sure that those who were part of a wait list already in the second year have a better favorability, so that they're not continuously finding themselves in a wait list limbo.
I think that's an excellent idea, because obviously we don't want to drag people through a program for many, many years. So as I say, we didn't have that problem last year, so we haven't formalized that process, but I think that's a very, very good point.
And can you speak to if there are any tax breaks, insurance tax breaks offered through the private sector if someone's home is gone through a retrofit or
so in terms
earthquake?
Of tax breaks, so last year we
I'm sorry, not tax breaks.
Insurance.
A break from the insurance company on lowering or offering a certain incentive.
Right. So the California Earthquake Authority, as of January 1st, now offers a 20% discount for pre-1960 houses that have done this kind of retrofit. And between 60 and 79, they'll get a 10% discount.
What about the private sector?
I don't know whether... I believe that... I know that Giovera has a discount. I don't know of any of the other insurance companies.
Something to look at, possibly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Parrish?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm John Parrish. I'm a state geologist and chief of the Geological Survey, and thank you for inviting me to participate this afternoon. I'm going to make a very quick presentation on a synopsis of the California Geological Survey's hazards programs as part of the state's role in preparing communities for seismic events. And we work very closely with CEA and OES and a number of the other state agencies that are here, as well as with an innumerable number of local agencies around the state. And perhaps the first phase of the government's role in preparing and protecting the public from earthquake damage is determining where the seismic hazards exist and the characteristics of those particular hazards. Well, CGS is involved in this first phase. The second phase, of course, is planning, and the third phase, of course, is execution, is building. Well, we're involved in the first phase as mandated by several legislative acts, and we carry out extensive outreach and collaboration with very many local agencies. Our work is used by engineers and planners mostly. The first is the Alquist-Priolo Fault Zoning Act, which was passed in 1972. And this act prohibits the construction of structures for human occupancy across the surface rupture of an active fault. And it requires the state geologist to put zones of mandatory investigation around those faults so that prior to construction in those areas, there has to be a detailed geological investigation. If the fault is found there, one has to set back from that. We have, to this date, produced 558 zone maps in the state, and we have zoned more than 5,000 miles of active surface rupture faults. This affects about 100 cities and 38 counties, and we're still mapping. The second legislative mandate that we had was also passed in 1972, and that's the Strong Motion Instrumentation Program. And this requires CGS to place strong motion seismic instruments around the state and on structures to measure how those structures react to ground motion caused by earthquakes. The information that comes from this program goes directly into California's building codes so that the structures can be made more earthquake resilient over time. And to date, CGS has placed about 1,300 instrument stations around the state, comprising about 8,500 separate instruments on 225 buildings, 82 Caltrans bridges, and 22 dams. CGS is working arrangements with the City of Los Angeles, with Caltrans, the BART system, San Francisco and Long Beach harbors, and several other local agencies to instrument and oversee the instrumentation projects that they operate. This is the largest strong motion network in the nation and has received both national and international recognition for its excellence. The CGS, in cooperation with the USGS, operates the Center for Engineering Strong Motion Data, which catalogs earthquake data from California and around the world. And these data are readily available for California's design engineers to access when building new structures in the state. We also have the Seismic Hazards Mapping Program, which was passed in 1990, and it requires that CGS place mandatory zones of investigation around areas that are subject to liquefaction and landslides caused by earthquakes. To date, CGS has prepared 119 maps covering 165 cities. As an adjunct to this program, CGS has mapped over 57,000 deep-seated landslides, and all this information is freely accessible to local governments and their planners when working on their general programs. In addition to these, CGS publishes an annualized earthquake loss estimations for the state so that local communities can see what the potential damage and losses will be. In concert with the USGS and the Southern California Earthquake Center, we produce the Uniform California Earthquake Rupture Forecast, which provides earthquake probability forecasts for the state. And you've probably seen the latest ones say there's a 93% chance in Southern California of a Northridge-style earthquake in the next 30 years. Those are the kind of statistics that come out of this for planning and engineering reasons. And in cooperation with the Office of Emergency Services and FEMA, CGS produces materials relating to tsunami inundation hazards along California's coastlines. We've published 135 inundation maps along 1,100 miles of the state's coastline. And what we are working on now is to doing a probabilistic study of the inundation so that that can be turned into building standards for local communities to see what the inundation and what the chances are of a tsunami taking out pieces of the coastline. Also in concert with California school districts and the state architect's office, CGS reviews about 400 public school sites for seismic hazards each year. And with the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, CGS reviews about 40 hospital sites per year for seismic hazards, and we place strong motion instruments within those hospitals to measure the earthquake effects on those structures. We have a strong and dynamic outreach program to many California communities to assist them in preparing for the inevitable earthquake and its seismic consequences, and plan for a successful resiliency to both the community's infrastructure and to their economies. And we try to work ahead of the construction and development in all of these communities using their development plans. They come to us. We work with them to get our maps done prior to the development and the expansion of their construction so they can take advantage of this information before the fact rather than afterward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd be interested to actually know, given the programs you have in hospitals and other major sites, what interface there is with the early warning system. But an answer for another time right now, later on. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Assemblymember Cooley. Thank you, actually, for the opportunity to have Cal OES here to talk about earthquake safety. And I'm going to try to adjust and cut to the chase of hearing, kind of what you're interested in and the state's role in all these different facets of, the life cycle of a disaster, especially with earthquakes. So we are the state's emergency management agency. It's our responsibility to organize, all things to ready California for disasters, but also to respond and recover from them. So part of that is, all of that is in support of communities in California. So nothing we do is anything short of what our counties and cities need. We also are responsible for drawing in the federal support, to your point, in order to organize that and apply that where it's most needed in California. So, we work with all the state agencies that are here today and then some to understand what their roles and responsibilities would be, especially in response and recovery. So there are disaster programs. FEMA, you mentioned. California has a disaster assistance program. Those do provide some relief when they're activated for communities and for individuals. But it's also our responsibility to really leverage everything that the state has and to work with state agencies to pivot and apply their expertise day to day and also their resources to how they can be most effective for the disaster. So the drought is an example of that. That's been a long-standing event, and we've really had to be creative with our state agency to see, what do you have? How can that be repurposed to address this disaster need? And we do that a lot. Just as an example, the bandwidth the Department of General Services has for contracting, that's something that we can make available for communities to rapidly recover because we can kind of, we've already sort of worked through all the process steps. So that's really what we see our role is. And so rather than doing that, in a reactive mode when a disaster occurs, it's our responsibility at Cal OES to work with state agencies ahead of time to understand that. What would you do? And one important way that we've done that, I think that I wanted to mention, is we've taken those worst case scenarios, if you will. Dr. Jones mentioned some of the statistics, like we think this would be the impact and the losses and the economic impact of a certain type of earthquake in this area. We've taken those scenarios and we've actually done deliberate planning with Department of Defense, with FEMA, the federal agencies and the state agencies to say, okay, if this happened, what would be, how would we organize our response? Let's examine that, because you will have the issue of the first responders that you're counting on, and some communities don't live there and may not be available firsthand. We have to look at that and see what are the alternatives. We talk about everything from staging areas, which is kind of where you organize your resource support, how we would move things, whether it's by land, by sea, by air, what would the priorities be? So we're able to talk through those. They're very extensive efforts, but very worthwhile, because we're not going to have time to do that organization organization, nor should the public expect any less, of us than to have thought of that ahead of time and figured out. And we know a lot will come to California from all over the place. How are we going to organize that? How are we going to employ those resources? So we've done that for Southern California. We've done that for Bay Area earthquake scenario, and also for the Cascadia subduction zone, which is in California, just the extreme northwest part, but also involves Washington, Oregon. So it'd be a very complicated disaster event because we'd have a bunch of states involved and a lot of demand for resources. So on the planning realm, that's our responsibility at Cal OES, is to bring together all those agencies, figure out, and private sector as well. It's a huge part, especially in response, but also in recovery, to kind of bring assistance to communities, and we need to be organized in that. So in terms of hazard mitigation, we've talked about that a lot. Those are the things we do to buy down risk, to prevent to the extent we can, and where we can't prevent, what are we doing? Great example is the residential mitigation program. Cal OES is a board member. We're happy to see that starting to play out and really expand throughout the state. We also are the stewards of hazard mitigation grant funds that come from the federal government. I think somebody earlier mentioned that. So what that means is most of it is after the fact, being when we have a disaster declaration, the federal government carves out a portion of that to apply towards risk reduction. We wish more of that was before the fact, but the reality is that's how it's set up. So California gets 20% in addition of what the disaster cost was to apply towards risk reduction. So quite simply put, $50 million disaster, $10 million on top will be authorized by FEMA to put towards risk reduction. Now we have to spread that out over a lot of need, over a lot of hazards, but we are able to do seismic risk reduction through that. It involves, somebody applying for it. It has to be has to meet a cost benefit test in order to be considered for that program, and we're able to pass through those grant monies. And those are really important because the work we've done ahead of time with communities to work with them to articulate what their commitments are towards mitigation. Great examples presented here with the local community representatives. Kind of makes it a lot easier to make that case to FEMA when the dollars do become available, because they've already articulated they have a stake in the game, they've invested in these things, and those are the things that make those projects very, kind of easier to put forward. Now, again, there's always more demand than what we can possibly fund. That's a reality. That's a gap. But we do have those opportunities, and California has put all the steps in place so that we can get the maximum award from FEMA, which is 20% of the disaster cost, back towards mitigation. We're right in the process, for example, right now with the Valley and the Butte fires, which were the fires that happened last fall, to solicit applications for mitigation, and those funds can be used for all hazards, not just the type of disaster that happened. So that's really important that we have that mitigation opportunity, and we planned ahead of time to know what those investments should be and what those commitments are, so that we can make thoughtful decisions on when those resources become available. So that's just a little piece of our role in the mitigation. There's a lot more examples of things that state agencies are doing that are like that we articulate in what we call the State Hazard Mitigation Plan. So there is a way that this all comes together. It's very complicated. To your point, a lot of state agencies doing a lot of things. One of the things that Cal OES does is pulls that all together to articulate one overarching state commitment towards mitigation. So we look at fire risk, all the things the agencies are doing. Here's what we need, here's what initiatives have been undertaken, and here's how we're moving through that list of priorities year over year. It's a long document, I will admit, but it's a big state, and we have a lot of complex issues, but it is pulled together. We do see our role as to make that understandable, not only for the state family, but for the public as best we can, so they can see and have an input into how that's all put together. So the mitigation plan is critical for us, as are these projects and investments that we're able to make with the FEMA funds. I did want to touch on earthquake early warning a little bit, if time allows, or...
I'd love to hear it, but if you don't mind, what I'd like you to do is ask you to hold off on that thought for a minute. Dr. Lucy Jones is going to need to leave for a flight that she has back to LA, and I wanted to ask her to come up again Before she left, I wanted her to talk a little bit about, just offer her thoughts on what I was hoping to get to, which was the conversation on what are some of the things that the state needs to be doing, can be doing, what are the maybe somewhat short-term easier steps, and then long-term more difficult investments that need to take place.